Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to move the reasoned amendment standing in the name of the Leader of the Opposition, myself and my honourable and right honourable colleagues, declining to give a second reading to the bill on the grounds it does not go far enough to combat illegal immigration or to ensure that all foreign criminals are deported. Firstly, Madam Deputy Speaker, I can't help but notice the absence of the member for Dover, the Immigration Minister, who I was expecting to see in his place. Perhaps the Home Secretary has not yet forgiven him for openly defying her a few weeks ago and her rather extraordinary public campaign to get him fired. No wonder she has so much trouble deporting illegal immigrants when she can't even deport her own junior minister from Marsham Street. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, well, does the Home Secretary deny that she tried to get him fired a couple of weeks ago, unsuccessfully? I notice she makes no such denial. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, at the beginning of her speech, the Home Secretary made a number of claims about statistics, one or two of which I would like to very gently take issue with. She referred to small boat crossings. Since the election, 76,000 people have dangerously and illegally crossed the Channel by small boat. That is more than under any other Prime Minister. And let us keep in mind, those crossings were undertaken mainly by young men, all of whom were leaving a safe country, France. Nobody needs to flee danger in France. She also referred to removal numbers. Of course, about 85% of those removals are voluntary, and only a tiny fraction of those removals relate to people who arrived by small boat. In fact, since the election, removals of people illegally entering by small boat amount to only about 5%, 5 or 7% of small boat arrivals. So if you enter this country by small boat and you have a 95% chance of staying and you get put up in taxpayer-funded accommodation, no wonder the crossings have occurred in record numbers. The only way of deterring these crossings is if almost everybody arriving gets deported when they arrive. Let me also observe that of the 80,000 people whose asylum claims were rejected at first instance last year, 2025, only 12,000 were removed or left. And when it comes to foreign national offenders, yes, it is true that F&O removals are somewhat up, which I welcome. But if you look at the breakdown by nationality, it tells a rather different story. Numbers of foreign criminals who are deported to countries like Albania, Romania, Lithuania, Poland, those numbers are quite strong, quite high, when you compare them against the offender population. But when you look at countries outside of Europe, the numbers are very, very much lower. So, for example, Jamaica, Iraq, Nigeria and Somalia together have 1,150 offenders in prison. And yet last year, and many more out in the community, I would add, and yet last year, only 110, under 10%, were removed. So yes, the removal of F&Os, foreign national offenders, to countries in Eastern Europe are going well, and I commend the government for that. But when it comes to removing foreign criminals to countries outside Europe, like Jamaica, Iraq, Nigeria and Somalia, the figures are very, very low. And the reasons for that are some of the ones the Home Secretary touched on earlier. So anyway, I do take exception with some of the Home Secretary's high-fiving at the beginning of her speech. Let me touch now, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the proposal for so-called safe and legal routes or refugee sponsorship. Now, these numbers would be additional to the asylum claims we're already processing. Last year saw the highest number of asylum claims in history. I think from memory it was somewhere in the region of 109,000. And this current year will only be a little bit less. So to add to that, at a time when we already have record numbers of asylum claims, strikes me as irresponsible. The Home Secretary said there would be a cap, but she didn't specify what the cap would be. I'd be interested to hear it. She also asserted that the people coming in on these routes would not be a burden on the general taxpayer because their sponsor would look after them. But what she neglected to mention was that support only has to last for the first year. Thereafter, potentially the taxpayer will have to pick up the tab. So I must say I do not support the creation of these schemes until we have got illegal immigration and asylum claims down essentially to zero. And in response to the argument that somehow the creation of safe and legal routes will stop small boats, I think that is an absurd argument, because unless you give access to this country to everybody who wants to come, to everybody congregating in northern France waiting to get on a dinghy, just in 1 second, unless you give access to all of those people, the ones who don't come in on the scheme will still try and cross on small boats. So the idea this will stop the boat on its own is frankly absurd.